All right, we're back. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Don't mind
Uh,
me. I'm looking for some portal numbers that should scare the crap out of people who haven't signed up for the promotion yet. This is bad.
oh, the number of kids have been taken.
Yeah, it's very low percentage wise. Compared to the kids that have gone in. So here it is. Of FCS kids, there's been about 830 FCS kids have entered the portal. 11%, 11.9% have found a home. That's
11.
bad.
That's really bad.
11. So since August 1st, Power 5 kids, 607 have entered. 21% have found a home. Group of 5, 484 have entered. 17% have found a home. And overall FBS, there's been over almost 1,100 kids and only 19.5% have found a home.
That's incredible.
So it's not good. I mean, it's just not good. And you need a differentiator. You just do, because nobody's going to pay attention to you. I talk to a lot of coaches now with NIL. Coaches aren't looking for the big name kids. They're looking for those smaller school kids, the FCS kids, the D2 kids, or the smaller group of 5 kids that no one really knows about, because they don't want to deal with the headache of the ask of, I want this amount of money. They want to find diamonds in the rough, but they have no way to find them because it's impossible to dig through the portal with, almost 2,000 kids in there between all of FCS, D2, and FBS. So what they do is they say they look at my feed, the Farrell portal feed, which is almost up to 10,000, and that's where they find them.
Well, that's incredible. So that tells you right there, you got to get on myfootballcamps.com/D1-transfer. We already have a couple guys that we are doing stuff with. There's a huge opportunity, but if you wait too long, see, that's the thing that happens when everybody jumps into the portal. Everyone wants to jump into the portal, and now in the past it was the guys in the portal were like guys who didn't play that much. It's guys who are playing. It's guys who are at FCS that were stars. It's guys who are at Ferris State who balled out in the championship and who are going to put themselves in there to go up to D1. It's guys for Maine or Yale. I mean, guys from the grad transfers now. Never had that. So that it's a big deal. It's very important that the prospects really take. Otherwise, you're going to just get lost. I mean, think of how many guys are in the portal right now?
Yeah, it's like 1,500.
1,500 guys in 2 weeks. Not even.
Well, since August 1st, so it's been 1,500 kids between the FCS portal open, the FBS portal open, but also the grad transfers that were allowed to enter, and also the kids that had coaches fired that were allowed to enter. So, there's just a lot. It's going to be more than 2,000 by the end of the month. The dead period just started. So now there's going to be little communication and also little ability to take visits and all that stuff. So things are going to set dead for like 3.5 weeks. And this is the time where you have to differentiate yourself online, because you're not going to be able to do it in person. They're not going to answer your DMs. They're not going to answer your text messages, on and on. So, but you don't have to do it. I mean, you could sit there and maybe lose a scholarship, or you could pay $300 for promotion and maybe get a scholarship. It's up to you.
It's the reality. And it's funny because a lot of guys thought they were going to get jumping in. They're going to get NIL deals. How funny is that? Because now, what you said, there are guys that aren't trying to take them for NIL deals, and that's a big marketplace that guys thought they would be market.
Yeah. So your connection's breaking up a little bit here and there. So it must be a Wi-Fi issue where you are, but yeah, I mean, like I said, they don't want the headache. They want the headache for Devin Leary or guys like that, and you disappeared. there'd be an NIL bidding war for the Hudson Cards of the world, but if you're a kid who's not really well known, you're not going to, oh, you're back. You're not going to get NIL. And if you're a Power 5 kid, who may come from a big school, but you're taking a step down, or, you're taking a lateral step, they don't really want, they'll take lateral step kids for sure, but they want more of the kids that are going to step up. They'd rather have a group of 5 or FCS kid come into their program because he's on the upward trajectory, rather than somebody who didn't work out at the school they were at, even though that was a big ass school. Could be Alabama, but they're less inclined to go on that guy because he's going to be a headache with NIL asks and all that stuff. So in the high school, so it hasn't been announced yet, so I'm not going to ruin it for him. But, one of our players, and I think I might have ruined it last week, I don't even remember, but, got a preferred walk-on offer at a school he really, really likes, and he's as happy as can be. We've got a couple other guys that got, FCS scholarships. We talked about it last week. It's not as glamorous as everybody thinks it is, but those are the more rewarding ones, because those are the kids that would never, ever suit up again. I mean, their senior year is over. They would never put on a football and pads again. Just wouldn't. There's no place for them. They wouldn't go anywhere. And now they're going to get an opportunity to get some of their school paid, or, play at a level and continue their football career for another 4 years. Honestly, the promotion kids we have, NFL, I mean, we all know how unlikely that is. Maybe there's a kid who catches and does that, but it's really about playing football more and getting your education paid for, because nobody wants to stop playing football at 18 years old. That kind of sucks.
Dude, I remember when it ended at 23, it took me a year just to be like, wait a minute, I'm not football anymore? How is that possible?
I mean, it's your whole life growing up.
Your whole life. It's your whole life. Like, and when it ends, you're like, what? How is that possible that it could possibly end? And I think that's the thing. And like, you get the opportunity to go play at another school. And then the thing with the whole, the transfer thing, I don't feel like guys have an understanding of what that is. I mean, it's like they jump in, they think they're going to get picked up like Caleb Williams did. And I just, it's frustrating from a standpoint as it doesn't make a lot of sense as to what a lot of their guys' expectations are. Like, so explain to them, like, what do they need to be able to get picked up properly? Because I think this is confusing to players, because they think that, like, I was a backup, at XYZ school, and I want to transfer, and they don't understand why they're not getting picked up right away, right? Explain to them why they have to work a little bit harder, per se, over maybe an FCS guy that started. Because I don't think guys understand that.
Well, they're also used to being recruited. Okay, so the Power 5 guys have been recruited through high school. Even if you're a 3-star, you got a lot of attention. You got a lot of schools coming through, a lot of coaches reaching out to you. So they expect that level 2 years later or 3 years later, when they haven't had as much success as they hoped. And it just doesn't get there. So it's a huge letdown for them, because the expectations are there. It's like, oh, well, I'm at Florida State. Didn't work out at Florida State, but surely all these other schools that recruited me out of high school that liked me are going to, jump in. No. Corey Collier is a great example. I talked to Corey Collier's mom. He's a 5-star defensive back, 4-star on most sites. I had him as a 5-star, and I was kind of overshot that. It was an incorrect ranking. He was a 4-star kid, corner, but then he plays safety at Florida. Heavily recruited at offers from 40 schools. He jumps in the portal, and I would talk to his mom, and, the interest is lukewarm. FIU, FAU, UCF, local schools are interested in, but from a Power 5 level, he hasn't played for 2 years. And he ended up in Nebraska, which is a great landing spot. But this kid out of high school, never in a million years, he's a South Florida kid, who chose Florida over Miami, Florida State, Alabama, everybody. Never in a million years would he think in 2 years that he would have to relocate his entire life up to Lincoln, Nebraska and play for a brand new staff, because his thought, like everybody's thought, as a big time Power 5 kid, is I'm going to go 3 and out and go to the NFL. And it didn't work out that way, and it's not going to. Now he got a great landing spot. But these Power 5 kids think that the attention is going to be there, and they get very disappointed when the tension's not, or it's lower than they expect. Whereas the FCS kids and the group of 5 kids are like, this is amazing. I wasn't recruited to this level out of high school, but now I am, and this is great. And that's because you want something fresh as opposed to stale. You know, when you go to the grocery store, you know, you kind of look at an expiration date on milk, you know, and they put all the latest expiration dates in the back, you know, because they want to sell the stuff that's going to expire quicker. So if you grab the first one off the shelf, you're getting one that's close to expiration. But if you take a little bit of a time and you dig through and go to the one to the back, maybe you get an extra week of expiration, and it's fresher, it's better. And that's kind of the approach of the portal, is like, I'm not going to go for, you know, what I see in front of me. I'm going to go for something that's different, and it's going to take more work, but that's what I want to land. And I think that's what you're seeing here. So they do get upset, but everybody gets upset. I mean, it's a difficult process. I mentioned those numbers. And 19% of kids right now out of 2,000 are getting offers. So I just talked to through DM while we were on the call. I talked to one of our transfer portal guys, McCray Mort. Okay, he's a kid out of Idaho. He was, Idaho high school football is not recruited. He's a 10,500 meter guy.
Right.
Fast on film. We have his high school film. We have a little bit of college film, but he was a walk-on, I believe, at Idaho, and then he transferred to Idaho State because he had a credit snafu coming out of high school. And he doesn't really have a lot of film or playing time, but he's fast. But I just asked him, I said, how's it going? He's like, good, no offers though. And I tell him, and I'm going to tell him right now, this is going to take time, man. We're not going to do the $300 portal promotion is like, we're going to continue to do this. There's no 1 month, there's no one time, there's no 6 month. This is going to take time. And this is going to be, a lot of schools are going to wait till after the early signing period. They're going to wait until this, that, and the other to figure out what their roster needs are. And it's going to probably go into the spring for him. But, even he's impatient, and I get it. But
because they think magic is – see, here's the thing, and this is important. So why does a coach want to have an FCS kid that started and maybe was a star versus a guy who was, let's say, a 4-star or 3-star scholarship guy at Division I that was a backup? Well, a couple things. They look at it like, this guy has already proven he can do it on the field. So if I'm even the big time programs are taking them, but let's say I'm I don't know, Rutgers, right? And a guy plays at Sacred Heart and is a star, right? And he's got close to the size of my other guys, right? Maybe he's not, maybe he's a half inch shorter, which is why he went to or inch shorter, and maybe 10 pounds lighter initially when he went to college. Now he's still shorter, but now he's the same size as the other guys, right? And turns out he's a really good football player. So now you got a proven commodity that can come in and play right away and compete for the starting job, if not win the starting job. But at worst is a backup that can play, right? A lot. And then you have a guy who's proven at this point to be a backup at a Division I school, has yet to get on the field, is still going to have to prove that they're worthy to get on the field, even if they went from a larger school to a smaller Division, or not a smaller Division I, but a less prominent Division I. So they still have to work. So when a coach is evaluating that, they're still saying, okay, does this guy have potential to do what we think he can do? Does he still have that potential? Versus the guy who's proven it, even if he may be, I don't know, maybe not quite the athlete. And that's what guys don't realize. They don't realize that everybody, listen, one guy might have been a little bit better athlete in high school, okay, or was more developed. And now this person, by becoming a star at FCS, may have caught up. But you're right. The NIL part is a big thing. FCS guys are unspoiled from a financial standpoint and unspoiled in recruiting. So this is now like a big deal. The fact that a guy who wasn't recruited super heavily all of a sudden now has FBS offers, and they're willing to be a part of that program. Whereas I would guess some of the Division I coaches have concerns about it, and that's one of the things that the players have to also show that they can overcome as well. And I think that's an important issue. The transfer portal thing is not an easy thing, and I think transitioning over to like the high school side of it, it's one of the reasons why for the if they don't get what they want in the portal, they're gonna hit home with their 4-star and 5-star guys, right? I mean, because they don't want to lose those guys when they realize they don't hit a home run in the portal.
Well, that's the other part too, is you have to, gauge your current roster happiness and who you're bringing in versus you would rather bring in somebody lesser known to compete because you're going to drive kids off your team, as you mentioned. So, you bring in some kid from Yale, no one's going to be threatened by that. They'd be like, oh, he's Yale, whatever, or from some, small group of 5 school like App State. You bring in a Power 5 kid, and then it could upset your entire room, your linebacker room. Oh, this kid's coming from Alabama. And then all of a sudden you got a bunch of guys coming to your office saying, well, do you want me out? Why are you taking this kid? It's just, there's so many nuances behind the scenes to this, which is why it's better to be a smaller school kid. And again, listen, we're not saying big school kids shouldn't sign up for the promotion as well. They should. And I think they're going to realize it, but it's going to take them longer to realize it. Because this is just the trend. This is what I'm hearing. I'm not making it up.
Right.
You're seeing it. I mean, it's just factual. And it's going to play out even further and further. So, the promotion itself it's going to take a while. We're not going to get you an offer immediately, just like the high school thing. This is a faster version of the high school thing. We could get you as a 2026 and promote you for 6 months, 12 months, whatever. Eventually, you're going to get to where you need to go.
Mike, you know what this reminds me of? So I was, I don't know, I think I was an NFL agent for 6 years.
Right.
Okay, and we kind of specialized in those guys who would be late round and free agent guys. Now, what's amazing people don't realize is, and this, but there are guys that you worked with years ago when they were in college, they're in the NFL. So this whole thing is like all a big circle, right? So when I did it, I actually surprisingly knew a lot of guys right pretty quickly, and so we were able to help a lot of guys. But what I noticed in the NFL, and maybe you could articulate if you think there's a relationship there on this. At the NFL, I noticed guys who were at a big school who were a backup or started, then lost their job, and then, kind of that kind of a thing. And it came out, but they might have been a higher level recruit out of high school, were sometimes harder to get into the NFL than my FCS guy who was the right size, who was a star for 4 years. And they think, well, this guy started and he has the potential to be something, at the NFL. I had a lot of times easier time getting those guys in. And I think a lot of it was, do you think some of that has to do with ego? And I think that, this is to me why a lot of big school guys need advocates, because when they didn't have advocates, they thought they should go to, I don't know, let's just say the biggest of the biggest agent. And they said, oh, Dave, you're more focused. What basically happened is those guys never even got into the NFL, and they came from big schools. Because if I was a big time agent, I had all these big time players that were coming up, let's say from Alabama, 1st rounders or 4th rounders or 3rd rounders, and then the other guys that were like backups and stuff, I didn't have time to pay. If I was a big time agent, they didn't have time to pay attention to those guys, and they got in. If they didn't, they didn't. And that's what relates to me in the transfer portal wise. Whether if you're a FCS guy looking to move up, you'll need help. Guys will really like that. If you're an FBS guy, but you're a backup, you're really going to need help, because the normal process you would thought would work for you, and that's why I related to the NFL with the bigger time agents, is not, because the guys they're focusing on are now the 5 and 4 star big time recruits coming out of high school, because they see more long term upside if you had backed up. And I think now it doesn't mean that that person doesn't have the upside. It just, they could have been in a tough situation, wrong offense, wrong defense. That those things are true. But I think that's a big part of it, and that's why I think guys need an advocate. But it's also, they have to come into it with the right attitude. I mean, I think their attitude towards the process of transfer portal and how they approach it, coaches are going to see it. Like, if you're demanding someone gives you an offer and they kind of have to go through their process and you don't understand why, I think you got to become humble in this process and really be willing to get help.
Yeah, and I think there is, it's less of a turd factor than it is
True.
there's a humbleness, of course. Going in the portal is humbling, because again, you're sort of going in the portal in itself is admitting that you didn't get it done. I mean, for every Caleb Williams, there's 1,000 kids who didn't get it done. But to your point about being an agent and the smaller school kids, there's a hunger and there's a trajectory. So the trajectory of this is, let's say you get a smaller school kid. I don't know.
Cooper Kupp.
Cooper Kupp. The linebacker. Well, Cooper Kupp is a good example.
Adam Thielen.
FCS kid. Or who's the linebacker for the Colts? Leonard from SC State, South Carolina State. Right. So those type of kids, had to overcome a lot more because they weren't heavily recruited. They end up having to go to different, places and play on a smaller level. So the disadvantage they have is the lack of competition. You don't get to see them against Alabama and Georgia and Florida. But you also get to see their trajectory as a football player on the rise. Whereas some of the other ones, you see them sort of top out and flatline. So depends on the NFL team. Do they want a guy who's got that hunger, who's continuing to rise, who's been a chip on his shoulder since high school? Or do you want that guy who's kind of handed everything and he kind of plateaued? I think a lot of people want that guy who's, on the rise. And that's what the portal is about too. I know, listen, Justin Flo is a great example. 5-star linebacker out of high school, went to Oregon, absolute terror, 245 pounds of sheer muscle, but he got hurt, both of his seasons at Oregon. Every school in the country wanted this kid, 60 plus offers out of high school, 5-star consensus, had his choice, came down to Clemson, USC, and Oregon, goes in the portal 2 years later, and lands at Arizona. Now, that's not bad, but it's certainly not good. Arizona's not a great football team, and they're in a rebuild. But you'd rather go on a kid who is like a linebacker at Tulsa, who isn't injury prone, who hasn't been handed everything to him, who is more productive on the field. I'd rather have that guy at Oklahoma than a Justin Flo at Oklahoma, because his trajectory is upward. So, the big name kids don't need the attention. Justin Flo didn't need attention. He doesn't need our promotion whatsoever. He was promoted so much out of high school that it wasn't a necessity for him to even sniff at our promotion, nor would I offer it to him, nor would he accept it, blah, blah, blah. But that doesn't mean that everybody's clamoring for him. The people that need the promotion are the ones trying to get into that pool of, okay, this school is recruiting 3 wide receivers in the portal, and maybe it's Arizona State, maybe it's Rutgers, maybe it's Syracuse. How do I get in the pool of 12 guys that they're considering for those 3 spots? And you need the promotion to do that, because nobody knows who the hell you are. And I know staffs just don't have the bandwidth. They just don't have the bandwidth to handle this influx of portal players. They are trying to do the evaluations based on their own homework. They're trying to go through the film of all these kids, but they're also doing that for 2024 recruiting class. They're also wrapping up 2023. They don't have time. So what they'll do is they'll look for somebody that they trust to sort of say, this is a kid to watch. That could be, I don't know, it could be 24/7. It could be On3, right, or it could be us.
Right.
But it's not going to be some, relative or somebody without a following or somebody who has no respect in the industry saying, yeah, I remember that this kid at Idaho State was awesome. Well, no, you need somebody who's legitimately, respected in the industry to say that. And even then, we just did McRae's first promo last week, or, you did yours a week and a half ago.
Yeah.
We're going to have to do it 6-7 more times, for him to get on that even radar of like, who is this kid? Just like high school, it's no different, except there's less of a time frame. Like, he wants to be placed for January so he can get into college and transfer his credits and start school in January.
Right.
That's probably not going to happen. It's probably not going to happen for a lot of kids. This 20% number is not going to exponentially rise. There's still a lot of commitments. We had roughly on Sunday, we had like 400 commitments in the portal because the dead period was starting. And now is the time where everybody's like, make your decision now. We're not going to talk to you again until January. So that number of 20% is going to go up to maybe 25% over the next couple of weeks. But that's 75% kids left in the portal. And entering January, that's really, you're not going to be placed by January. You're not going to be there for spring football. You're going to have to go through this entire spring and sell yourself to try to get there for June. And that's what we're looking at right now. So anybody who signs up for the promo for the portal, just know this is going to probably go through the spring, and you're going to get the attention, but it's going to take time, and you got to be patient with it. Those who want the high school promotion, we got more time. Now is the time for 2024. Don't wait, because as well as I do that these schools are doing their evaluations on 2024 6 months ago, and now. Right. Once they get done with 2023, or at least 85% of 2023, and once they get done with bowl practices, when you get into late December, they're going to really start looking at, okay, what's my visit plan for the spring? Where am I going to go see kids? And I'm going to come through New Jersey. Do I hit the shore? What schools do I hit in South Jersey? What schools do I hit in North Jersey? And that's just one state in and of itself. And as we know, college coaches, they don't want to go to 15 schools. They want to go to like 4 or 5 big ones and then maybe spot recruit 2 others, because that's a lot of time and effort. You got to be one of those extra visits unless you're at a Bosco or a Bergen or something like that. And that's why you need to get on it now.
Well, that's a big point there, because the time constraints are greater because of the fact that they have to get through more information, right? So the time they could spend at one place versus another, I remember the old days, guys would just sit down with you and literally like shoot the shit with you for 30 minutes, just kind of pick your brain, especially if they're a guy they respected. And now they come in, they're coming in with an agenda. If they're coming to your school, they want to meet with those guys. If there's nothing there, they literally want to get out of there, like shake your hand and get out of there, because there's no time. They're all in their time constraints. This is a big part of what is really misunderstood, the time constraints they're under, right? It's they are now looking, in the past, they looked for high school recruits, and then they took transfers once in a blue moon, one or 2 a year, maybe, right? Now, this transfer thing is huge. The regular recruiting thing is huge. There's 2 signing periods, right? So that's a big issue. They got to get all the guys they can get in the door now, and then there's going to be an influx of guys who got missed on for the second signing period. I mean, am I correct on that? I mean,
yeah, I mean the timetable of it all. So as you mentioned, early signing period. There is the second signing period in February, which used to be the traditional, first Wednesday in February and the big one. But that's less of a focus now. It's more. It used to be, if you also remember, when we had the one signing day in February, a lot of the focus in January was still on the next class coming in. That's when junior days start in January, and that's when all this, these big visit weekends start in January, because you'd still have like 85% of your class committed, but you have to worry about flips and babysit all that stuff and take official visits with the other kids you want to close on. now it's even more so focused on the next year. So 2024 is even more in focus right now. Signing day this week is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but 2024 is in focus more than it's ever been before. And 2025 is too. You know, that's why the earlier you get on here, the better, because, and sorry, I was distracted because Dante Moore did flip to UCLA. We talked about him earlier.
That's big news. Yeah.
It's crazy news. And that's going to, you know, the impact of that, you know, okay, so now who's Oregon going to get? They might flip Jaden Rashada from Florida. So who's Florida going to get? You know, Florida's got DJ Lagway in the 2024 class already, but are they going to reach on a 2023 quarterback now? Or are they going to go on a 2024 and get two of them? Everything affects everything, and every move that's made affects everything. So these 2023 decisions that are made now affect the 2024 recruiting boards and all that stuff too. You don't want to be unknown at all at this period of time, because a lot of planning for the spring is being made. So yeah, I think we're both on the same page here where 2024 it's not too late, but it's going to get quickly too late. You know, if you hit us up in the summer, and we had a lot of 2023 kids, because we didn't offer this program. We had a lot of 2023 kids hit us up in the summer, and it was a struggle at that point. If we were around and they hit us up in December, it wouldn't be as much of a struggle. So now's the time to act. Now, 2025, be smart, get ahead of it. 2026, be smart, get ahead of it. Don't wait. Don't make us do this pitch again next December. But yeah, I mean, this is the time where everybody's seeing everybody sign, whether it's portal kids and recruits. Don't just sit around and watch all this happen. Be proactive and make it happen. So
what as far as like NIL stuff, because this is something that I think is a big, people don't understand, or kids definitely don't. Like, I see these crazy, it's so crazy to me. These kids will waste their time with like, I don't know, John Smith Food Company.com/Tim, you know, oh, get your 10% off. Like, people are not, like, you're not going to make any money from that. Like, you'd be better off spending your time selling widgets or selling your football cards from home. You'll make more money from that, you know? What level do these guys have to be at to make real money from high school at an NIL? It's only the 5 stars, am I right? Or maybe a few of the 4 stars?
Yeah, I mean, it's the 4 stars too. I mean, you know,
yeah, 4 stars, right?
Yeah, there's only so many 5 stars. You know, some sites do, you know, 32 because it's the NFL draft number. Sometimes sites do 30 to 35, sometimes 40. But there's a very small amount of 5 stars. And so the 4-star kids, you know, there's probably 400 to 450 at each site. And it's gone up exponentially over the years because, again, as I've talked about, you know, they keep the 5 stars the same. There are no 2 stars anymore, so everybody's a 3. And then because everybody's a 3, then you have to differentiate more and make more kids 4. So there's more 4 stars than there were 5 years ago, and that'll continue to grow. But those kids will make NIL money. Some of the 3 stars will, but not a ton. It depends on, you know, if you're a local kid and you're a high 3-star and you're from Kentucky and you go to, you know, some big school in Kentucky and you end up going to Louisville, you can make some good NIL money because you're local. But most of those kids are going to earn their NIL money as they go on. But yeah, NIL money is pretty much for the big name kids. You know, and you can't really focus on that, honestly, unless you're a big name kid. You know, how many kids have you seen that weren't big name kids that have great careers and still don't really have a lot in NIL? And then you see these kids, the JT Daniels of the world, the retreads, you know, goes to USC, gets hurt, loses his job, goes to Georgia, gets hurt, loses his job, goes to West Virginia, loses his job. He's still commanding NIL money, which is hilarious to me. He got over $1 million from West Virginia.
Did he really?
Because he's a 5-star name. You know, that name out of high school and that ranking is worth apparently a ton of money. I should have like charged kids for that ranking because it's really like it's sometimes for a quarterback, especially, it's like $1 million ranking. But for the other kids, the focus has to be on get there, establish yourself, then, move on and get NIL.
Are they giving NIL deals like I heard, I don't remember which team it was, but like payroll type stuff? Is that something that the big schools
So legally, they're not supposed to. Legally, they're not supposed to, give you any sort of security like that. The NIL deal is supposed to be, these booster collectives that you hear about, like let's say the Ohio State Booster Collective, they're supposed to work with companies that, get you a deal with a certain brand, and that's where your NIL money comes from. So when you go on a visit, Caleb Williams, for example, he has a deal with Beats. Okay. So what happens is USC was recruiting him to follow Lincoln Riley to Oklahoma. They talked to, the collective, the coaches aren't supposed to, or the school's not supposed to, but the collective talks to Beats, Dr. Dre. Dr. Dre talks to Caleb. They set up this deal. So it's like the deal's in place. There's no sort of salary structure to it. There are some collective deals where every offensive lineman gets $60,000 or something like that. I've heard at Oregon under Phil Knight, every kid at Oregon is going to get the minimum of $60,000, which doesn't sound like much when you're throwing around $1 million names. But as a high school kid going into college, $60,000 is a ton of money. So that's all in place, but it's going to get worse. And the employment thing you're talking about, I mean, the National Labor Relations Board is suing USC, the Pac-12, and NCAA to make them employees, which is never going to fly. But more and more, we're skewing towards player rights versus the rights of the university, because everybody's tired of the universities making billion-dollar contracts on TV and the kids getting nothing. So it's going to be a player's world. The problem with that is it's going to be such a player's world that all of a sudden it's going to be skewed so far where the NFLPA and the NFL have a nice collective bargaining agreement where it's beneficial to both sides. This is skewing so much towards the kids that the kids are going to have that power, and they're going to be able to leave. Dante Moore just committed to UCLA. He could go to UCLA with this NIL deals in place that they have for him, which I heard are very lucrative, and transfer out after a year. Now, there's stipulations in the contracts, of course, that say if you transfer, this kind of null and void. But he could go there and make $1 million, and then transfer out to the school he really wants to go to, and be a millionaire. And that's what we're going to see more and more of. It's crazy.
That is crazy. The labor relations thing, and the issue will probably come up in Illinois as well for the same exact thing eventually, because that's where Northwestern originally did it. And those more left states, because they're very interested in that part of it, the labor relations part of it. Really, I saw a take on this, and this is my guess. They say California would like nothing more than to completely crush college football. And to do away with it, and that's it's such a headache for them. I don't know why, but they would want to do it. It's the same issue that they have, they were trying to stop UCLA and
from going to the region, the UC regions. 5 people voted against that, which is just 5 people who are against capitalism and free market share. I mean, UCLA should go to the Big Ten. They're making more money. Why wouldn't they? But 5 people tried to stop that.
Right. So, but it didn't get pushed through though.
No, they're going to the Big Ten. It's done.
Right. And that's the same thing that they're going to try. And so they're trying to do this now with the labor relations thing. And the bottom line is that the one thing, you're 100% right. If NIL becomes a situation where the schools have to pay them, that is what's going to happen. You're going to have an employee situation, and which is what has made it more Wild West without any parameters, because there is, and we've talked about this a few times, there is no, these aren't franchises of a large, they're all independent organizations, loosely affiliated with whatever conference they are, because they get money from those conferences, but they govern themselves, right? Outside of the light parameters, and then the recruiting aspect, which was once bad in a sense of there was no benefit necessarily in some things, and there were some benefits in other things, but there was some enforcement. Now there's no enforcement. There's just zero enforcement. There's zero capability to enforce anything. Well, I mean, what could they enforce? Who's going to go to talk to the collective of the University of Miami and say, okay, I want to see exactly what you're doing, and they're going to do that to every school? No way.
Yeah, they don't have the bandwidth. The NCAA doesn't have the staffing for that. So it's, it's self-monitored, and we all know self-monitoring at some schools is they take it very seriously, and other schools they don't. Yeah, so we're headed towards a really unappealing product in college football, based on what we're used to. We're going to have, I don't think the employment thing is good because there's no way to prove. They went after USC because USC is a private school. Okay. Right. So, but they win at USC with the Pac-12 and with the NCAA overall, saying that the NCAA in turn with the Pac-12 are employing these kids at a private school. And so Northwestern, they tried to do that 10 years ago to unionize. That didn't go through. This won't go through either. But eventually what we're going to have is an employment type of relationship with players and universities. And everybody thinks that's great for the players. But with performance, as you know, when you work for a corporation, there's performance reviews. There's performance standards. You have to meet those standards. And you will be fired if you don't. And you will be fired with cause if you don't. So let's say a player goes there and this is great. I get, health benefits, I get salary, and then I can get my NIL in addition to that. And I get a full scholarship and all that stuff. You blow out your knee in the first week of the season and they do your performance review at the end of the season. They say, you know what? You didn't live up to our expectations. You're fired. Well, what about my scholarship? Sorry. That was part of your benefit package as an employee. Well, what about my salary? Yeah, same thing. Health? No benefits there. You're fired. And then what are they going to do? So for everybody that looks great for, I want to be an employee of USC because they make so much money. Yeah, it's good, but it's also bad. And we're going to head into that eventually. We're going to head into NIL collectives out of control more so than they are now. We're going to head into kids choosing schools simply for the paycheck or going to a school, getting the paycheck, and then transferring to the school they really want to, as I mentioned before. We're also going to get into the portal where eventually someone's going to sue because you're only getting X amount of bites at the apple of the portal. Well, you're allowing me one-time transfer. Why can't I transfer twice? Why can't I be Quinn Ewers to go to Ohio State one year, Texas the next year, USC the next year? And maximize my value. You're hindering my ability to make money. All this stuff is coming, and it's really every time something new occurs, it becomes a less attractive product. And you have to remind yourself when you watch on Saturdays, this is college football and it's fun. But now we're not in the fun part. We're in the business part, and it's getting kind of ugly, and there's no one to enforce it. So what I've heard is that power conferences, the Power Five, they're going to govern themselves. Well, okay. What if you have, sort of cross-pollination? What if you have a Big Ten school that tampers with an SEC kid, steals them? Who's going to, SEC loses that kid. The Big Ten is not going to punish that school for tampering. Like, you're going to have 5 different sets of rules and 5 different enforcement programs, and they're only going to enforce what they want to enforce, which is, I don't give a crap that Ohio State stole a kid from Alabama. What do you want me to do? And the opposite, Greg Sankey's gonna be like, I don't give a crap that Alabama stole a kid from Purdue. What do you want me to do? And that's where the danger is. You're gonna have 5 different NFLs with probably no cap and no free agency guidelines. Eesh.
Wow, you just painted a very, very
bleak.
Well, it is because there's just going to be no. been on your phone where the phone rings, someone decides
I
to
hate
call.
that. I freaking hate that. Like, why can't they come up with a phone where if it rings, because you get all these spam calls, right? You get like these idiots, and there's no way to stop them. You get a robo killer app, and it just stops one, but they crap up another one. And then the phone rings, and you go black on your live. And don't get me started. But I just painted a very bleak, kind of depressing picture of what we're looking at college football in the future.
Well, I just think that it's an arms race that has no ability to end. It is completely a situation where the more I could spend, the more but even I would say, I mean, I guess billionaires have endless money, but when people keep giving money and they don't get a return, even billionaires want a return, right? So,
billionaires are the cheapest people you're ever going to meet in your life.
Right. So so what's going to happen is these guys are giving, right? Let's say they keep giving, they're giving. And they're like, well, this kid like transferred out after a year, right? And then this kid didn't pan out. Oh, well, okay. 1 out of every 5 worked out the way I wanted to, where I gave him money.
That's bad business.
Right. The billionaire eventually is going to say, okay, well, I was writing it off in the beginning, but now I'm like, am I just being dumb here? Right? Am I just
very cheap? Very cheap. Mark Cuban went to Indiana. If he invests in NIL, which I heard he might, the first 4-8 season Indiana football has, I'm done. I'm going to focus on basketball. Maybe they're better, but I'm done at football. I just gave $10 million to an NIL collective. Your players suck. Half of them transferred. You went 4-8. I'm not an idiot. I may have billions, but $10 million to me is a big deal. I'm never investing it again in your product. And you're right. It's going to dry up.
Right. That's the way I look at it, because the same thing happens to hedge funds, right? When guys go, a lot of millionaires and billionaires put money in hedge funds with certain people. You don't have to look at it farther than the whole FTX deal, right? These guys put all their money and they put all their faith in. The next time someone comes around with their hand out in a similar situation, it doesn't matter that these guys were billionaires. They're not going to give the money. You can only get them on these things so many times to go through. You're going to have to win. Now, the ones who win will be okay. But even there, I just think like you're almost like a personal sponsor for each player. You know what I'm saying? And what comes along with that personal sponsorship, there is a level of responsibility in a sense. So if I'm Mike Farrell decides to invest in Dave Schuman as part of the collective, but you're the big money maker and you're invested in me. And if I play well, we see each other after, come on in, Dave. I play poorly and I'm invested in you. Like, what's to stop that guy who's the billionaire to coming up to him and saying, hey, man, that's not good enough. Now, he's not the coach, right? But he's more powerful than the coach in a sense because he's giving him money. So there's nothing to stop him to say, hey, oh, by the way, it's just like what you used to see it like on a low level with like the Friday Night Lights stuff and the guys in these towns in Texas who are the car dealers and they give their big boosters in these high schools and the coach isn't doing it the way they want him to and they get rid of him, or the star player isn't doing it the way they want him to and they're mad at him. This is on a scale level. Like, we're just cracking the beginning of it. And there'll be stories that'll be winners because someone will do it right. You know what I'm saying? They'll have a handle on it. They'll do it right. There'll be a handful of schools that do it right. But there's going to be crazy stories of people who do it wrong. And we're just at the beginning of it. I heard this, and Mike, I can't remember the podcast I saw because obviously you don't always know it's true, but I was a fairly reliable guy. And he talked about that some of the players came in. Let's say they were supposed to get $1,000. Use as an example. They go through the season. They're like, "Hey, where's my money?" And the guy's like, we don't have it." Like, literally, that's what I've heard has gone on in a few situations. If you're at a lower tier school, even right, and you promise the guy $50K, okay, which compared to the big schools is not a lot of money, and oh, by the way, now all of a sudden our budget is tight in our collective and we're giving it to this transfer over here that's good. And now we go, and the guy's like, "Hey, where's my 50K?" And he's like, "I got 10 for you." Like, there's no contracts, or very few contracts. There's no disclosure on it. How is there no like in the SEC, right? You buy a stock. Mike Farrell buys a stock in the SEC, and I'm not a big regulations guy, but I know why some of these things are necessary. Okay, you buy a stock, like I want to make sure that I put a $10,000 here, that this guy's going to walk away with my money and just be gone, which is what
Right.
happened with FTX, right? Well, that's going to be the situation here. I give money. I don't want to walk away and this guy be gone, the next year. There's no disclosure of how much I gave, and it's no there's no longer bags being left on someone's front door, but at least a bag of cash left on someone's front door, you kind of exactly know what it's going to.
Right.
I
Yeah,
know
this
it
is
sounds crazy, but that's true, right? I mean, you know what it's going to. I leave a
no,
bag of cash on your
yeah.
door. You know what it's for.
Yeah, that's definitely different. And there's been, we got to wrap it up, but there's been a few poor investments already that people are learning from, Spencer Rattler, DJ Uwongalele, I mean, Dr. Pepper, remember before Bryce Young this year, DJ was Fansville guy. It was $1 million deal for Dr. Pepper. And he ended up being very, very average at Clemson. And now he's got to transfer out. Spencer Rattler was supposed to be the number one pick in the draft. He got benched for Caleb Williams. He had to transfer out. Now he's very, very bad at South Carolina, or very average. So there's been some investments that haven't worked out. It makes people more cautious. But eventually we're going to run out of billionaires and millionaires to invest in this stuff, because the guys who were burned on Spencer Rattler are like, I'm not going to do this again. But then there's a new crop of, billionaire, millionaire idiots who are going to do it again. But eventually you're going to run dry of those people wanting to promote. So you're going to be invested in individual players, like you said. Like, I'm going to invest in Quinn Ewers, and I'm going to invest in Quinn Ewers, and I don't give a crap whether he goes to Ohio State or transfers to Texas, whatever. That guy's got a golden arm. I'm going to invest in him wherever he goes. But then that's a personal contract between a company and Quinn Ewers, and like you said, there's no disclosure. I mean, these deals are being signed; they're just not making them public. And as they, you could dig and find them. You hear the made up stuff. Nico Imavlieva got $8 million made up. Dante Moore, going to UCLA, just flipped. He's got a deal that he'll sign after signing day with certain companies. You can make them public, but nobody's really doing that, where it's like, Adam Schefter's, this guy signed an extension. A.J. Brown signed an extension with the Eagles. It's for 6 years, $42 million, whatever. That stuff's not being reported yet. And I think it's not being reported because it's being kept very low key, because people don't want to look stupid. You invest in A.J. Brown, like, let's say, who's the guy from the Giants? Galladay, right? The contract was public. He's horrible. He doesn't play. Sucks. It's a bad investment, but it's public. But these are like investments on kids. So they're trying to keep them as hush hush as possible so the businesses don't look stupid. So there's a lot of quiet things going on here. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff. There's a lot of things to the Dante Moore flipping from Oregon. I wrote an article last night about it. He committed to Oregon. Kenny Dillingham was the offensive coordinator. Kenny Dillingham took the job at Arizona State, the head coaching job at Arizona State. They hired a new offensive coordinator, Will Stein, that nobody really knows about. He was Hudson Card's offensive coordinator in high school. So the assumption was Hudson Card was going to transfer from Texas to Oregon. Bo Nix decides to come back. All of these things factor in. Dante Moore's NIL deal is better at UCLA than it is at Oregon. There's so many factors behind every decision that's made that people don't pay attention to. So what I see on Twitter now is Dan Lanning can't recruit. Dante Moore is a piece of garbage because he promised he was going to stick with his commitment. There's literally, and I just gave you 4 of them or 5 of them. There's 28 things, 29 things, 30 things behind the scenes here that's occurring for Dante Moore to make this decision. That never used to be the case. DeAnthony Arnett was supposed to go to USC, went to Oregon. because there was a drive-by shooting right before signing day where he almost got killed and he wanted to get out of LA. That was simple. That was one thing. Now there's 30 and nobody really reports on those 30 things. And it's going to be 60 in a year. So we're headed towards just a lot of chaos. I guess it's good for us because I could write about it and get clicked. I wrote the Dante Moore article last night. Like 20,000 people read it. And it took me 20 minutes. And it was all sourced information, but nothing I'm going to say. I'm not going to say I got this from such and such because they want to be off the record. Good for business, but bad for college football itself. So let's wrap it up here. So the myfootballcamps.com/D1 for high school. Don't wait. Don't be dumb. 2024 now, 2025, 2026 now if you're super smart, 2027. And then, what is it? myfootballcamps.com/what for the portal?
D1-transfer.
So D1-transfer, that's the one you're going to want to get on. And we'll get more of those. We just got an email from Carter Lynch, his dad, Brian. Carter is a really good recruit out of high school, went to Cal, 6'4", 240, got injured. Obviously, every school has coaching changes and situations. Every one. There's not one school that I could think of in the Power Five that hasn't had one coaching change. And that's just the way it is. Now, most of them have 5 or 6, and some of them are just mass chaos when you got Fickle going to Wisconsin, Satterfield going to Cincinnati, Brom coming over to Louisville, Walters going to Purdue. Endless. So you may go into a situation where it looks great for you, and then they change everything. You lose all your coaches. You get hurt, and then you're behind the 8 ball. So he's a very smart human being, Brian Lynch, and we're going to get Carter Lynch, a lot of attention. But I think more and more people should be smart. $300 is nothing to invest in your future. So that's my spiel.
Don't be left holding the bag. Till next week, we'll sign up myfootballcamps.com/D1, myfootballcamps.com/D1-transfer, and we'll see you next week.